Hey everybody, this is Everyday Commentary, and I am going to do a video review of my Strider PT. And this is the Strider PT. It is the concealed carry version, which means that, as you can see here, it has the convex handle scales, and the pocket, or the titanium side is also convex. It uses a frame lock, obviously. I think all Striders use a frame lock. And unlike the regular PT, it does not include a pocket clip. I purchased this one from Plaza Cutlery. There were none available anywhere else at the time, and so this was it. And it came in OD green, and then it came in a neon green, and I was not too thrilled about the neon green. But the knife itself is a relatively small knife. As you can see in the hand, it's pretty small. It's not a big beefy knife. Let me get a couple of knives for comparison's sake. So there's the Strider, and then here is a Benchmade mini grip. So it's a bit smaller than the mini grip, which is not a huge knife. And then comparison to the Sebenza, the small Sebenza 21, it is also smaller than the small Sebenza 21. I use a 20-point scale on my website, and you do the same thing in the video reviews. There's 10 categories, and then you can get a possible score of 0, 1, or 2 in each of the 10 categories, and you add it up, and that's your total overall score. And so this received an 18 out of 20 on my website. It got a 2 in every category, and I'll run down through them in why in a second. The only thing that it did not get a score, it got a 0 in, was the retention method, because number 1, I hate lanyards, and number 2, it has no pocket clip. But you stay tuned to the website. I'm going to see if I can get that fixed. I've been talking to a guy that runs a machine shop and does gadgets and gear and stuff, and he has indicated that he's going to work on a prototype. So I will have more information about that up on my website, which is everydaycommentary.com. So the first category is design, and that is how the knife looks on paper. And here, as you can see, this is a knife that has that classic Strider profile, both when closed, and then the Strider profile when open. And that means that the knife, it has a certain look to it. It has a certain design aesthetic to it. And that aesthetic is one that really matches up well with how the knife fits in your hand. You know, the jimping is good. It's purposefully cut. It's not decorative jimping. The choils are really great. Putting them together really gives you a good grip on the hand. Nice 2-finger grip if you want it. But you can easily do all 4 fingers. I mean, I have medium-sized hands, and I can fit all 4 fingers on there pretty easily. So in terms of design, there's really nothing I would have liked more than this knife. I mean, if you compare the design of this knife to, say, the design of this knife, you know, the Sebenza is a classic. It's a classic knife. But it does not have that ergonomic feel, in my opinion, that the Strider does. You know, if you look at knives, if you study knives, you realize that this portion right here, right around the pivot, is the part that makes the most difference in the grip. And here, there's this cutout for your finger, and that's okay. But you still have all this space where, you know, in order to do real detailed cuts, you probably have to choke up like that on the Sebenza. But on the Strider, the choil, the forward choil and the rear choil, they match up really well with your hand, and you get a ton of control over your cuts that way. And, you know, like if you look at the Delica, if you look at the Dragonfly, if you look at a bunch of other knives that are really well known for good ergonomics, you're going to realize that this is the area in which you have to focus on if you want to do well in terms of ergonomics. And it does that really well. I like the way that area of the knife is laid out. I also like the rear of the knife, how it sort of fits in your hand well. It gives you something to hit on your palm. And then finally, there's a nice little touch here that I hadn't noticed initially, and that is, let's see if I can get it to show up on camera. No, I can't. But basically, the point of the knife, you know, is slightly off axis, like if you drew an axis through the knife. And that means that the knife is going to, even when it's doing, you know, like a regular level cut, it's going to approach the material at a sort of angle And so this is a way to get an aggressive approach angle on material without doing a recurve, and that's really quite nice. I'd also note that the ricasso right here on the knife is very well done. It looks good, and it is functional. It means that you can sharpen the edge all the way to the edge, and it also provides a little bit of a stop inside the knife. If you see down in the knife, there is a little hump. That hump matches up there, so you don't have to worry about the blade hitting inside the handle. And if you hear, you can hear all the noises of the knife. You can hear the closing, the detent locking into place, and then here's the lockup bar. Both of those are really nice sounds, but they are more important in what they indicate, and that is this knife has really great fit and finish. You know, one of the concerns that people had in terms of Strider knives was that they didn't have quite the fit and finish that the Sebenza do. And my experience is that that's just not true. This is I think like what is essentially like the third improvement or change on the PT. The original was a change in the pivot. The next one was a change in the lock bar face. Now they have one that has both changes incorporated into it. And in my opinion, the CC version is finished just as nicely, or maybe a little nicer than the Sebenza. And you know, I've had this Sebenza for 2.5 years now, and it's a great knife. I mean, it's not a bad knife at all. You can do a lot with this knife, and it's smooth. Believe me, it is smooth. But the detent is a little better here. And then the other thing that's really amazing, and let's see if I can get you a good picture of this. The stone wash is really incredible. I mean, the stone wash is like, they're almost like little starbursts, the stone washing pattern. And so, you know, that's another reason why I think the fit and finish on this knife is absolutely superb. It's perfectly centered. It's you know, opens easily. Not quite as smooth as Sebenza, but the Sebenza is a little older. Lockup is good. Let's see if I can get the picture of the lockup. Yeah, lockup is good. Not custom good, but it's still pretty good. And so I gave it a 2 out of 2 in terms of fit and finish. And I gave it a 2 out of 2 in design as well. Right. The grip, as you can tell based on the way I talked about it in terms of design, the grip is really excellent. The jimping is good. The convex handle scales fill your hand nicely, but it's not so bulky it's hard to hold on to. And then the two choils, the forward choil and the rear choil for your finger, are great. But here's a subtle touch that I didn't really pick up on. By having this at an angle, it matches up really well with the palm of your hand when you hold the knife. And so it kind of locks it into your hand and gives your thrust cuts, you know, a little bit more leverage. Whereas in a knife like the Sebenza, you kind of have to shove it into your hand and lock it in. And there's still a little bit of an angle there, and that goes into your palm of your hand as well. But this one with the jimping in the back makes a big difference. And look at the same thing on that. There's really nothing there on the Griptilian. And those are like nice little touches that the Strider has that I think make it a great knife. In terms of carry, you know, this is a very small, very thin knife. You know, it's probably basically the same thickness as the Sebenza with a little bit more for the convex nature of the handle scales. And it weighs like 2.5 ounces, so it's a really, really light knife for what it is. I like that about it, and it carries well. The steel, this version uses S35VN, and I know that there's some criticism on the forums of S35VN, but it really is a great steel. It's one of my favorite steels. It's not quite as chippy as S30V. It holds an edge really well. This did not come with like an absolute laser beam edge, but it has held that, you know, like somewhere between like scary sharp and utility edge for a very, very long time. I've had this knife for 2 months, and I've done some pretty serious cutting with it, and it still has a very nice edge capable of shaving hair off my arm. The blade shape is really and so it gets a 2 out of 2 in steel and 2 out of 2 in carry. The blade shape is really nice as well. You know, this is not a complicated blade shape, and if you want a complicated blade shape, you can get a mixed Strider custom that'll come in all different shapes and sizes. But this is a pretty simple spear point or drop point blade, and the simplicity of the design just makes it nice and easy to use. There's a place to do some roll cutting right there. There's a place to do some, regular slicing. You can easily cut cord with it, put it in your hand, and cut out like that. It's a great, easy to use blade shape. It also is easy to sharpen, which I like as well. The grind is great. I love the grind on this knife. This is not a full flat grind. As you can see, there's right there's a portion of it that's flat. So if you want to use it on a consistent angle, sharp under the Wicked Edge or the Edge Pro, you can do that. I just use a sharp maker and it's fine. But the grind is nice and thin. I mean, you got a lot of blade stock for a knife this size, and they cut it down nice and easy. I mean, you can look how steep that is right there. You can see that's a really nicely finished piece here where the ricasso is. Grind is immaculately clean. It's very even. You can see there the cutting bevel is nice and even. Give it a 2 out of 2 in grind. And the deployment method. On deployment method, there's 2 ways you can open this knife. You can open this knife with a thumb stud, and it works. But I hate thumb studs. And really, that's not there as a thumb stud. It's really there as a lock bar, or the blade stop. The preferred method is the thumb hole, and here the thumb hole is really well done. It's not quite as well done as the Spyderco thumb hole. I think that the perfectly round thumb hole allows your thumb to pivot better. But really what you're doing here is you're not so much pivoting your thumb as you are catching that top lip. So you're doing it like that, not like that, what you would do with the Spyderco hole. And it really is effective. I've never had any problems opening it. This is not the fastest knife in the world. Even if you spider drop it, it's not the fastest knife in the world. But it's very smooth, it's very consistent, and it's very easy to do. So in terms of deployment, I gave it a 2 out of 2. From a retention method, as I mentioned, there's no pocket clip, so it fails. It gets a 0. If this was a traditional knife, a non-tactical or non-modern pocket knife, then I would probably evaluate it differently. But they're putting this out there as a modern pocket knife. It has a one-handed opening, it has a frame lock, it has titanium scales, it doesn't look anything like a traditional knife, and so you don't get the free pass. If you're going to do this kind of knife, you should be able to have a clip with it. And I understand that the CC model is supposed to be slim and sleek in your pocket and be a true pocket knife. I get that. But just put a clip in the bag and you can choose to take it in or take it on or take it off. More options are better. In terms of lockup, I have a picture on the website of the review, and the lockup is pretty much exactly where it was in the review. And it's a little bit, it's probably half, it's probably hitting like right at half. The angle on the lock bar has changed. The original PT did not have that steep of an angle. This one does, and the angle on the lock bar and the angle on the lock face, they made up really nicely, so they just kind of slide into each other. And by putting an angle on both of them, it makes it a much more stable lockup. I mean, this is crazy good. I'm getting no blade play in any direction, and this is a pretty small knife. So if you wanted to find some error, that's probably where it would be. The lock is nice, engages nicely. There's a little bit of a run of jimping there, so it allows you to close it and open it easily with one hand. The lock is really stable. I haven't had any movement one way or the other, so I gave it a 2 out of 2 in lockup. Overall, this is an 18 out of 20. And it's an 18 out of 20 mainly because it doesn't have a clip, but if you assume that it doesn't have a clip, it got a perfect score. When I get the clip on, hopefully the clip will work in a way that makes me like it. In terms of a comparison between these two knives, I'm going to do a later video and a post on that because this is sort of like the showdown that everybody wants. Both are excellent knives. I don't think that if you bought one, you would be disappointed. Being lucky enough to have both, it's given me a better sense of what I like in a knife, and so I will talk about that in a later video. So thank you very much.